Unicorns of Love and H2K, you can't afford losing more games. If you want to make playoffs, then you have to start winning right now.
As a lot of teams are even in the standings, it's a BO1 and every game matters. If you're at the bottom table right now in the LCS, you really need to win every single game, otherwise you won't make playoffs.
Until there's no hope, we will keep fighting our way to playoffs.
Unicorns need a miracle to get to playoffs.
The Unicorns of Love are stampeding over Giant.
I think we will make playoffs 100%. At the end of the day, we're still on the top and we'll get there. I'm not saying that they are bad. Of course they are not bad. We're just better. You really need to look good if you want to be a top team.
And Mini Truex is looking to do it all alone!
Teams will be fighting for those spots, the last two. Second isn't going to make me happy. Like we all want to win here, and we can't afford to drop sloppy losses here and there. I am what H2K needs to make it to playoffs.
What a play from H2K! An outplay, can he jump onto Ruin as well? The Cannabouage, the jump, the oh-no, get done!
It's not okay for us to drop any more games from now on.
There's so much pressure to reach playoffs, because if you don't, then there's basically nothing.
Every match right now matters a lot. We need to really win every single game. We never had it this close.
It's week 5 and it's time to stop f***ing around.
And for the first time in history, the fourth consecutive EU LCS title, G2 Esports.
Misfits, the underdogs in this game. No one expected anything from them.
Let's make this a clean one.
Welcome to Berlin, Germany for week 6 of the EU LCS Spring Split. We've got some crucial matchups ahead of us as the teams look to strengthen their position in the race for playoffs. Hello everyone, I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, starting off the week with Martin the Fiscio Lunge.
Just finished cooking the famous sausage. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually done live. It was definitely
You just changed to
Yeah, I just changed around
yeah.
real quickly. That's what I do. I'm very fast.
So dedicated. Well, the teams are also dedicated because it is a close fight at the top going into week 6 with G2 Esports, Fnatic and Vitality all tied in first place.
And I gotta say, I'm happy to see G2 and Fnatic back, tied for first place. They belong at the top of the standings. Of course, they play each other tomorrow. Makes it even more hype. Middle of the table, shucks. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't even know who's beating who anymore. I feel like Splice can beat Misfits and then Rocket can beat Schalke and I can just switch around for next week. So I have no clue who's actually making playoffs at the moment.
Well, it is made more complicated by the fact that our #1 team, Vitality, dropped 2 games last week. So that got messed up. However, they're still in the top of the table.
Yeah.
They're probably going to make it. But between those other teams, it is a very close fight. I have no idea who's going to make it.
No, and I'm kind of scared for Schalke. 0-2 again.
Why are you scared?
I mean, this football organization, you expect them to make playoffs, and now they're playing some very important games this week. If they lose again, they might be out of the race.
Yeah, we'll see. What makes this even more interesting is that Unicorns in Love and H2K also picked up wins. H2K picked up 2 wins. The Unicorns finally picked up another win, so they're back in the race.
They look just as good as the middle of the table teams, which really means everyone truly beats everyone, especially H2K actually impressed me. I love the Shook effect. It's 100% working for them, and seeing them kind of bounce back after such a rough start, it is very good to see.
I love the Shook effect. I love best of ones, and the race for playoffs is closer than ever. And you are going to give your predictions about who you think is going to make the playoffs tonight in PGL.
My predictions are kind of boring. Kind of, for now. The other guys have insane predictions. I picked all the biggest names. I mean, these 6 probably gonna get
So they can get into a discussion with you, and that's what we want to see.
100%.
All right, cool. Well, the race for playoffs is on, and the quarterfinals will be played on Friday and Saturdays from this studio. And then for Copenhagen, the tickets are now out. Visit eu.lolesports.com for more info. There's also a video if you haven't seen it yet. Martin's cooking things. It's amazing.
cooking big things. It's a little bit over the top, but that's how you cook the Danish hot dog.
Yeah, and you've been cooking up a bit more the fish show because you looked at some key players that can secure the wins for their teams this week. Starting with G2's Perks, that man in the mid lane is the guy you are looking at.
Yes, I have to start with Perks. He is currently my MVP candidate, the best performing player in the EU LCS, and he's just performing every single week. And that's why G2 Esports, they're on this 6-game win streak. He has impact in the early game, the mid game, the late game, and that just means they can always rely on Perks, which is so key for G2 Esports. And this week is really important for him and the team because Perks goes up against Caps tomorrow, and of course Fnatic, they're fighting for first place. Could be a potential preview of a final here in the EU LCS, so I'm very, very excited for that specific matchup. Next player though, it's gonna be Maxlor. This is the captain of Misfits. Still trying to kind of find his ways in this split. We have seen some tank play from him, we've seen some Rengar plays. I really just want to see Maxlor find one style and stick to it, because we've really seen how Misfits rely a lot on his early game presence, and then later on his shot calling. So Maxlor needs to perform at the highest level, because then we also know he can be the best jungler in Europe, and I want to see that this week, because he's going to face off against the third guy. It is God Gilius himself. Big rivalry, of course, and this is the most vocal player in the EU LCS. There's the trash talk, there's the confidence, and I don't want him to change. I want to keep seeing that style from Gilius. I just also want to see more of him and Jizuke together. That is the strongest combo Vitality can bring, and I want to see the early game be more impactful from Gilius specifically. That's what I'm really focusing on for this specific week, because they need to bounce back. 0-2 week, they are still tied for first place, and I'm sure they want to grab that first place for themselves.
Definitely so. That race is on, and a very important game in that race is also our match of the week tomorrow. But first, we have 5 good ones today as well. I'm especially looking at the last game of the day. They're all important for playoffs, but Schalke versus Misfits is directly a very big rivalry for me.
2 teams that for sure expected to make playoffs when they entered the spring split. 2 teams who are at risk of not making it right now because the teams beneath them are winning games. And these 2 guys, they can't afford to lose more.
No, they can't. And 2 of our first place teams, Fnatic and G2, are facing off tomorrow, as said, in our match of the week. G2 is going into the week on a 6-game winning streak. Fnatic have won 5 in a row. Well, they are tied for first place, and tomorrow could very well impact that first place depending on what happens today. And the matchups across the board are very good. I can see Perks versus Reckless highlighted here. Obviously, we heard from the man himself in the Euphoria podcast.
We did. He was very outspoken about how he's going to beat G2 Esports, so I want to see that. The last time they played each other, it was kind of the clash of trash. Now it truly can be the clash of kings, because they're actually playing at the very best. Yeah,
that it can. I'm very excited to see all the matchups across the board, and we'll see, or we'll talk rather more about the matchup tomorrow and in tonight's edition of the EU LCS post-game lobby. But for now, let's look ahead towards our first game between the Unicorns of Love and Splyce. The Unicorns, they seem to be in dire straits after losing 4 games in a row, but they managed to pick up a win against Giants just last week, led by their mid laner Exile on Zoe. Well, they're still only 2-8, so they need to keep it going. They need to keep this Exile train on the rails, the
Oh yeah, you got to win every single game if you're the Unicorns of Love. And Exile, he is the man we're looking at, because the team has kind of learned to play more around him in the early game, try and make sure he doesn't fall behind, and then later on in teamfights, like we're seeing right now, he can go completely crazy, deals a ton of damage. Same thing for Samex. We got to give him some credit here as well. But really, Exile is the guy we're looking at. I think he's personally a bit underrated right now, because he's actually showing up in team fights.
Well, last week was his best week yet, so we definitely want to see that going. And we also want to see what he will do versus Niski today in this matchup versus Splyce. Splyce also in the race for playoffs. And I think I also have some question marks with their mid laner. For me, Niski, he's taken a lot of resources, but he seems to be passive. He's not doing as much as maybe he could with that. With those resources.
Yeah, he's taking it slow, I feel like. He's still really getting used to Splyce and the EU LCS stage, where there's a lot of competition in the mid lane. So he gets the farm, he becomes a carry, but he's not the guy who kind of takes over in team fights. They still rely a lot on copy there. And another thing we also have to highlight, it's not just Niski, especially if we look at the early game. Xerxes and Odo Amne, top lane and jungle. Early on, there's no synergy right now. It's too passive. Odo Amne gets camped. These things need to be fixed for Splyce if they want to be one of the best teams in Europe.
Yeah, we need to see that top side of the map, getting it together a little bit more, because as I said, Splyce is at 5-5, and they now really also need to win to break into that possibly top 3.
But I feel like 5-5 for a new team is not too bad. You know, it's still middle of the table here. They can easily climb towards a top 3 spot.
Right. Kabi said, if Unicorns of Love want to make it to the playoffs, it's going to need a miracle. Is it a miracle if the Unicorns beat Splyce today?
Splyce, they're not that good that it's a miracle if Unicorns win. I think Unicorns are playing better and better, but I still believe in Splyce. I think they're going to take it. I actually think they might take a 2-0 week.
All right, we'll see what happens. It's time to kick off Week 6 here in the Spring Split, so let's head over to our casters for Game 1.
Thank you very much, Shox. Greetings, all you esports followers the world over. I'm, of course, Devin Pyrotechnics Young here with Andrew Avedius Day. How are you doing, my friend?
I am so ready, Pyro. We have 4 weeks, 8 games, 10 teams, and only 6 playoff spots. The race begins today, and these teams are eager to get on the board.
Absolutely. We're eager to get into the game. So here are the lineups for the stage. Splyce on the blue side for this game today. And there is one guy you have got to talk about, the main carry, the AD carry. It is Kobbe.
How can you not talk about this guy? When you look at Splyce, you're always looking down the bottom lane. So consistent in terms of his performance, his damage output, his laning numbers, everything seems to be going so well for the Dane down in the bottom half of the map for Splyce. And last week, he had one great performance, one not so great performance, and I feel like that's just tied to a bit of the inconsistency that we are seeing from Splyce.
We are definitely seeing inconsistency on that side, but of course, on the other side of the board, the Unicorns of Love, they're finally starting to find their footing. That crucial win over Giants last week. They're looking to pick up number 2 here today. Who are you looking at right now if you're looking at this team, Vedius?
I'm looking at the mid-jungle duo of Cold and Exile. It feels like their strategy right now is just sit in the middle lane, send those ganks that way, get Exile farmed up and ready to be the big carry in the late game fights, because this guy seems to be stepping up compared to what we saw in previous weeks. You give him a comfort champion, and when he's set up to succeed, he's really able to do a lot of work on it. In the past, we used to think of champions like the Vladimir, the Ryze, and recently, we've been seeing things like the Zoe come out for this guy, and we're still on 8.3. Only small nerfs have hit Zoe, so I feel like it's a champion that you really have to respect if you want to give it over towards Exile.
Yeah, Exile always loving to play those assassin champions, even way back in the day, and he's definitely had his ups and downs here in the ULCS. But give him some love. You've had Cold sitting in his lane, helping set him up. That's the kind of thing that can really punish a team like Splyce, where you have their mid laner Niski kind of backing off a little bit. We'll see how it goes. We enter picks and bans.
And as we do